Last year has been kind of awe-striking. I wasn't making bad money. Like, I was doing better than most real estate professionals. Probably doing better than the average wholesaler. I was doing way better than the average realtor. But man, just this last year has been really, really incredible. It's what I imagined, 10 years in business. To now we focus on the types of deals that we've learned how to do from you guys and your group, working with distressed title. You kind of broke it down into, okay, why do we use title companies? What do they do? Is their job curative? By nature, are they charging you a fee for curative scenarios? And I realized that's really not what they do. They're insurance companies. They're escrow and insurance companies. They're selling you insurance and providing an escrow service as kind of like an add-on. But ultimately, the curative comes down to kind of telling the seller what to do, telling the seller what their problem is so the seller can go fix it themselves. In investment real estate, you start really kind of venturing into true self-employment. And then now doing what we do, I feel like I'm not at the mercy of a title company. I'm not at the mercy of a broker. I'm not at the mercy of a client. I'm really at the mercy of the deal at hand and my own creativity, my own ability, my own resources to solve the problem at hand. And so it actually feels, for the first time in my real estate career, that I'm independently earning my own income, really for the first time.
Chris Berry, you're here because you're in the real estate space. You and I came across each other maybe a year or so, maybe a little bit more ago.
Sure.
And you do really cool deals. You're really good at it, and you've gotten there in a really short amount of time. And our listeners love to hear from guys like you. That's why you're here to talk about it today.
Cool.
Welcome, Chris.
I'm so excited to be here, man.
Me too. Why don't you do this? We got a lot of stuff to talk about: deals, money, mindset, ideology, things like that. But why don't you tell people who's Chris and how'd Chris get here for a couple quick minutes?
Okay, yeah. So I got into real estate actually because of my dad. It was a fallback. So I am a licensed broker now, but back in 2014, I met a girl. We had already had kids. We're young, and I'm at this point 19 and fixing to turn 20, and I just needed to figure out what I was going to do with my life. It was becoming rapidly apparent that college wasn't my path. It was too hard to raise a family and be in a committed relationship and, and grow substantially while staying in college and getting a degree. And so there was a point that I had this conversation with my dad, and he bought me my real estate license education material like the next day. I sat on those books for 6 months before finally pulling the trigger and just going to Champions.
You're not a student, are you?
Oh, so I am, but it was more about I was so addicted to today money. I was working in bars and restaurants. And so, I'd go in poor and come out rich. That was every shift. And so that was my whole life. And unfortunately I traded that daily roller coaster into a quarterly roller coaster when I got my real estate license.
Oh yeah.
And learning how to sell real estate, it was this huge shock to my system at the beginning because again, I made this trade-off from daily pay to monthly, quarterly pay. And in addition to that, I still remember me and my wife went through real estate school together, sitting there in class, calculating how much 3% of a sales price was. We're we only need to sell this many homes to make this much money. And looking back on that was really foolish. But one of the things that I kind of had to deal with at the beginning of my career was that I was really young. I was 20 years old when I got my real estate license, and I had to figure out
trust.
How do I get someone in their 30s, 40s, 50s to buy a house with the guidance of someone who had never bought a home themselves, who had never really been going through the steps that I'm asking them to go through. And at the end of the day, what I found would work for me was just getting really good at what I did, getting really good at being able to educate people, understanding the material really, really well, albeit in theory. The practice kind of developed with time as I developed an understanding of how that process worked, multiple clients over time. And so I just got really good at what I did, and really fundamentally what it came down to was learning how to become really good at sales, learning how to not only be good at what I did, but communicate effectively to the people that wanted to work with me that I knew what I was doing. And to me, that's really the basis of sales, is winning someone's trust with voice, with word. And so, that was probably one of the earliest skills I figured out I needed to develop. And then as time went on, I began applying that skill to more and more subsets, more tasks. And so, my first introduction to investment real estate was a wholesale deal. I didn't know what it was or what it was that I was doing. I thought I was selling to a cash buyer, and I immediately learned what cash buyer meant.
Oh, wait, were you still a broker at the time?
I was
or
still,
an
I was,
agent?
I was still a real estate agent. I was a real estate agent. I had a
It
client.
was a list. Oh, okay, I missed that part. Got it.
I had a client that had a house in pretty poor condition. They were in a distressed situation. Mom and dad were the bank. Mom and dad did not want to be the bank anymore. They were
And a
foreclosing.
wholesaler shows up to contract it and flip the contract. And you're like, what the world's going on?
A wholesaler I knew, a wholesaler that I actually had a relationship. They were another agent in my office. They put it under contract. We negotiated a cash deal. Those sellers were happy. I was like, this is so fascinating. And then
At that time, did you know it was going to be wholesaled?
I tell you when I can tell you when I knew it was going to be a wholesale deal. When I learned what it was that I got notice that the buyer wanted to go walk the property, or that the buyer's contractor wanted to go walk the property. And so I get this young man show up at the door, and that young man shows up and introduces himself. Come to find out, he is the disposition agent for a big box wholesale company. So my cash buyer had flipped the contract to a big box wholesale company. That big box wholesale company's agent showed up with 30 people in tow. And
I was like a new Western, probably.
I had to explain to my seller why
Were they living in the house?
she was living in the house. She was in a nightgown.
Awkward.
Why there was this parade of people. It was honestly a really terrible experience. It was my first experience with wholesale and what that meant.
Dude, I bet she was pissed.
She was pissed. I felt deceived. There was some level of like honesty, integrity there that I felt was left out. But ultimately, when I learned how much money they made on the deal, they ended up making like $60,000 in an assignment fee. And when I learned that, I was like, okay, so I want to learn how to do that.
You got over the madness real quick, and curiosity took over.
It was a curiosity thing. I immediately switched into like, you're a jerk. How do I do that? And like not be a jerk throughout the process. And so I got into wholesaling. That same agent that ended up doing that deal with me, I went back to him. He explained how everything worked. At that point, he was more happy to pull back the curtain, and he walked me through everything. I developed an understanding, and I realized, okay, so as an agent, I actually kind of have this ethical obligation to put this option on the table for sellers, because really,
That's an interesting perspective.
agents weren't pushing this. And what they wouldn't realize is that, and like most real estate agents, their hammers in the whole world's a nail. There's one way to do things.
Dude, most agents think it's unethical to show or participate in a wholesale. And you're saying this is a reasonable option and I should at least show it to my client because it might make sense for them.
Absolutely, because the buyers that are buying from wholesalers, whether they're small, like single operative wholesale companies or big box wholesalers, they're generally not looking on the MLS for deals. I would say the only investors that are looking on MLS for deals are either A, experienced, or B, they're just shotgun approaching, looking for contracts. And so it occurred to me really quickly that the two markets of buyers, those two buyer pools were actually mutually exclusive from one another. And so we took advantage of the fact that there was this buyer pool that most agents were neglecting at the time. Now I think more people are wise to it than before. And realize that it was an opportunity to be more transparent, to be more honest, give sellers an option and let them know like, hey, we're going to buy this from you. We may end up flipping it to an end buyer. Here's what that looks like. Here's why those end buyers are going to buy from us off market and why they wouldn't buy from us on market. And you're going to leave money on the table. We're going to capture some of that money, but we're going to get your deal done. It's going to be fast. It's going to be as is. And we were able to have a conversation with them about the benefits. And really,
because you're being transparent, they get to make their own decision, and they've been educated on all of it.
It was a tool in the tool belt. It was an option on the table, and it stunned me from the beginning. It still continues to stun me how often, when presented with this option, I would call it the easy button. When you give people an easy button, how often they'll pick it. Even when you're telling them, you'll make more money, you'll make more money, you'll make more money, you'll make more money. You'll get better representation, you make more money.
Some people out there want every dollar matters. That's a section of the population. Yep. A bigger section of the population want things to be easy.
Yeah.
The problem is when they call the realtor doesn't offer those things. They say, we're going to get you top dollar. It's my fiduciary.
Right.
And they go through this long and hard process to get them top dollar when the seller may not really care about that.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that the fiduciary is the right word, right? Fiduciary means I'm looking out for the best interest of my client.
What is the best interest? Is it the most money or the least time?
That's a conversation that happens between the agent and the client.
Should happen.
And so it was kind of that transition into wholesale real estate that I realized that opened up this whole other methodology for earning an income. At the time, I looked at it as a tool in the tool belt. And then I began to realize that the people who were really, truly benefiting from this were our sellers, were the owners that were in distressed situations because they were if they talked to another real estate agent, they were getting told that their circumstance was unfortunate, but their idea and their end goal was irresponsible and a bad idea. That's like you going into the doctor's office and saying like, hey doc, I'm not feeling well. I'd really kind of like you to look in my ear. And they say, yeah, that's silly. We're going to look in your throat instead. It's like, yeah, but it's my ear hurting. Like, please look at this. And unfortunately it came to a point where I realized that really it's better off that we go looking for these people in distress scenarios, because in those situations, my competition is not other agents. My other competition is other wholesalers who may not be as transparent, who may not be as honest. Same deal. I think it's an obligation that I have to go seek these people out and at least give them the opportunity to see what their options are and let them choose.
I like that.
And
you also will put yourself ahead of a lot of them because you're being upfront.
Yeah.
When we're doing distressed real estate, I'm much more upfront than most people when I tell them, going to make a lot of money on this if it works. If I don't, I'm going to probably lose a little bit.
Yep.
But you can do that yourself. Here's all the steps.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're very transparent, they trust you far more
Absolutely.
than if you lied and put on a good show.
I'd rather tell them no. That's actually that's a quote I get from my dad all the time. It's like, I'd rather turn you down now than let you down later, right? I would much rather tell you that, like, hey, I'm not your guy. I'm not your guy. It's better for everybody. It preserves our relationship. It preserves my reputation. I live to work another day, because this is such a reputation and relationship business that,
It is.
you know, the number of people I've seen like tank their careers by just doing one shady deal, it's just not, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
So you expose this wholesaling thing. You go do that, but that ain't what you do today.
No, it's not. I spent a little bit of time flipping houses because, like everything in real estate, there's always a greener pasture on the other side. And I saw as a wholesaler, these flippers seem to be making a lot of money. I fell on my face doing that because I'm just not a good general contractor. That is not my foray. I developed good relationships that I still use to this day. But really, I'd say where my real estate career took a real 90-degree turn from wholesaling, and now I would used to call it creative investment, but now I call that traditional real estate investing. to now we focus on the types of deals that we've learned how to do from you guys and your group, working with distressed title. You know, in wholesaling, we would come across these distressed situations that would often present messy title deals. And those messy title deals were often the ones that were making me pull my hair out, and that I was typically fighting to make sure that, you know, the promises I made up front, kind of in some level of ignorance, like I promised you the moon, and now I'm just working my heart out to like make sure I can fulfill those promises, and then eventually maybe even end up letting you down because there's a scenario on the table that can't easily be solved through a title company. I'll get so many title companies and attorneys telling me, you can't do this. You can't do this.
Those deals get stuck in your CRM like that line on the side of the bathtub that doesn't want to come off.
I still remember the first time that I came to when I went to the first summit that you did. Within 3 hours, I realized there's like 5 deals in my immediate like past. I'd say in the last 6 months to a year that I could probably bring back from the grave, that I had stepped over, considered dead, and just left behind.
Bring them back to life.
And bring them back to life.
You bring them back to life with no new tools, just a new perspective.
That's all it was. That's all it was.
Isn't that funny? A very small shift in thinking. You might have the most 5 valuable deals in your CRM, more valuable than all the rest combined.
So when I was in... the little bit of time I did spend in college, I was a physics major, and that was one of my.
That sounds hard.
It was fun. I really enjoyed it. That wasn't what made me stop going to college. Physics was fine.
It's all those tests I had to study for.
It was really just showing up to class, really. My physics professor in my like second or third semester had a really great saying. It's like, when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at change.
Oh, there you go.
And that was a really, really big perspective shift when I realized that, like, you know, you kind of broke it down into, okay, why do we use title companies? What do they do? Is their job curative? By nature, are they charging you a fee for curative scenarios? And I realized like that's really not what they do. They're insurance companies. They're escrow and insurance companies.
Bingo.
They're selling you insurance and providing an escrow service as kind of like an add-on. But ultimately, the curative comes down to really kind of telling the seller what to do, telling the seller what their problem is so the seller can go fix it themselves.
Right.
And so, ultimately turning the corner and coming into this style of investment where we are selectively looking for messy title deals has really been a big game changer for us. The deals have more spread. We are solving bigger problems, and as a result, there's more profit on the bone. And in general, it allows us to operate. I would say like my favorite thing about going from being like a dedicated real estate agent where I'm representing clients to investment real estate in general is just that I feel like I truly more work for myself. When I'm a real estate agent, I'm working for my clients. I had
That's
a job.
true, you are.
I had a job. I had an employer. With every contract, every client, I had a new boss. In investment real estate, you start really kind of venturing into true self-employment. And then now doing what we do, I feel like I'm not at the mercy of a title company. I'm not at the mercy of a broker. I'm not at the mercy of a client. I'm really at the mercy of the deal at hand and my own creativity, my own ability, my own resources to solve the problem at hand. And so it actually feels, for the first time in my real estate career, that I'm independently earning my own income, really for the first time.
True. You know, I had a trouble a couple of weeks ago where I was involved with a bunch of attorneys on transactions, multiple transactions, and they were more retail. We bought a home for our family, a couple other things. And I had to deal with all these attorneys, and I didn't have the full control. And I don't feel like I'm a control freak, but I've chosen to work in places where I have the control, and it's rewarded me, and it's been good.
Sure.
And I was in this other place where it was not fun, and I just hated it. And I remember telling my wife, God, I can't wait till all these are done so I can get back in a place that we choose how things work.
Right.
And what you're saying is I'm operating within the law and within underwriting guidelines, but I'm making those decisions myself.
Sure.
Not the way the title company says or what this lawyer says. And you get to pick everything. And in the end, if you did it right, you get paid. And if you didn't, you don't.
Right.
But that's the only real like boundary.
No, that's it. Yeah, no, the rules are not set arbitrarily by someone who's trying to serve their own best interests. The rules are set by the powers that be, right? It's the government, it's the institutional laws, it's you know, if I'm trying to get title insurance, it means I need to pay attention to what that underwriting manual says.
Exactly.
But really beyond that, I know what my end goal is. I know what the rules are, right? The rules of engagement are posted. They're for everyone to see.
Yeah.
And I get to go into it and play that game.
You get to choose how to play by them.
Absolutely.
I like that.
Yeah.
Chris, you've partnered with people that you would never trust in real life. Why?
Because sometimes, you know, it ends up transactionally working out in some situations where we end up being co-owners with someone that they're not an upstanding citizen. They couldn't babysit my kids. They couldn't, house sit for me if I had to go out of town. They're not necessarily upstanding novel citizens, but ultimately what ends up happening is we end up co-owners with them because they maybe they're the issue. Maybe they're the problem.
You're becoming a business partner with a person as a co-owner in a property. You would never choose to work with them, but because they're here and they got something you need, you're there.
Absolutely. And maybe they're the problem that we're solving for someone else. It often works out in situations. I would say one of my most recent deals was 3 siblings, and the one sibling who wasn't willing to play ball was causing the other 2 siblings to they were forced to be owners of a property they didn't want to be owners to. They were forced to have liability in a property that was past due on taxes, had a squatter in the property, had an animal that kept getting out, and was ultimately like racking up fines and fees and liens on a property that they wanted to sell a decade ago. And so they felt handcuffed to this problem sibling for a decade after their mother passed away. And when I was able to go in and tell them, like, tell you what, I can't take the handcuffs off of you in a traditional sense, right? I can't get you to sign a contract. We can't remove this problem child from the picture. But what I can do is I can take your place. I will put the handcuffs on in your place. And it means that I'm in the hot seat with your problem sibling. And really in that scenario, it ended up playing out that the problem wasn't just that the problem sibling didn't want to cooperate. It's that the problem sibling and the other 2 just had a really strained relationship. The fact that they were related to one another and they had the history that they had was going to make business impossible.
Isn't it interesting? You take the seat, but you don't have the pre-existing relationship they had.
No.
Now that person who's been a nut job may not treat you like a nut job, so it works.
Right. That's it. They realize that, like, oh, I don't have to deal with them anymore. Well, then now I'm much more willing to cooperate and do business.
I don't hate you like I hate them.
That's all it was.
So, Chris, you buy real estate no one else wants, outside of title and a tangled legal mess.
Yeah.
What is it that you see that others don't?
I would say the biggest thing that I see and what's really changed my perspective on a lot of these deals is understanding that the risk reward matrix that we deal with has for a long time been mitigated by title companies. And there are deals that no one would do because they wouldn't be able to get their title company to sign off on it. They couldn't get an attorney to tell them it was a good idea, that the risk that they were taking on was substantial.
And attorneys don't think anything's a good idea unless you have zero risk. But
Right.
as you know, the risk return metric
Right.
doesn't reward zero risk.
No, right. Yeah, zero risk
So you're
deals.
stuck in a situation that doesn't allow you to accept any risk.
Right.
Therefore, the probability of you making anything is slim.
Right. So all we do is we mitigate for our risk by keeping our entries low. Now that sometimes means that I buy duds. It means that sometimes I'll buy from an owner that turns out wasn't an owner. But when I'm spending not anywhere close to retail value for their interest, I've mitigated my risk sufficiently to allow me to problem solve through that scenario. So maybe it's not a dud. Maybe maybe I took on a significant lien or significant judgment, or maybe there's not 5 owners, there's 50, and if I paid those first 5 owners that I found their proportionate share of the retail value, then unfortunately I'm in a situation where I haven't mitigated my risk fully, and so. It's the same situation as earlier, is that now I'm not counting on title companies and attorneys to help me mitigate my risk. I'm mitigating my risk with my pocketbook.
Bingo. Put your money where your mouth is.
That's it.
You said the other day on a Facebook post that you bought dud deeds, meaning I took it to mean you bought a deed from someone to a property that didn't own an interest in the property. Why did you do that?
How did I do it, or
Why did you do that?
We were working off of best information at the time. Our research isn't perfect, but we have a dedicated researcher who works in the company. She's fantastic. She has a legal background, and she's able to find quite a few things for us long before we're able to find them. But sometimes when you have a ready, willing, and able owner that's willing to cooperate, willing to sign a deed, willing to sell their interest, we kind of shoot first, think later. And sometimes, that means that we'll end up buying something of no value.
What did you pay for that, one of those deeds?
Maybe $150.
Right. So this less than it would have cost you to go to dinner on a Saturday night. But at dinner on a Saturday night, you just get full and go home and go to bed. Here you had a shot at a ticket to the lotto.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And I mean, I'll be honest, it's not even a dinner on a Saturday night. Walking out my front door in the morning is a $150 fee.
These days, things change.
Yes.
Chris, you walked away from brokerage and wholesaling just when it wasn't working, but why start over?
So first of all, I would say I didn't necessarily walk away from brokerage and wholesaling. Those are still tools in my tool belt, but they're not my focus. They're not my niche anymore. That's not necessarily what I would even advertise to the world that I do.
Then what would you call your focus?
I would call my focus my new company. It's Heirloom Solution. We are an investment firm that focuses on deals that other brokers, other real estate agents, other wholesalers are neglecting and passing on because they see them as impossible. So really what I've seen is, my whole business philosophy from the beginning was being able to help people achieve their goals, right? That was something that was drilled into my head back in my early days at Keller Williams.
Oh, yeah.
All the way through my investment career was that, people have problems that need solutions. That's all it is. And so what I found was an abundant source of problems that was going to consistently provide problems for me to solve through the remainder of my career.
You said my new company. How many months old is this entity?
The entity itself is older than its current operation.
Then how long you've been using it for this? How long has that been? How many months is that?
Heirloom Solutions has been doing business as Heirloom Solutions since May of last year.
So less than a year old.
Yep.
How many dollars in transactions? So you don't have to say profit if you don't want to, but sales price and dollars of transactions. How much equity has either moved through or been purchased in that year?
So right now, as of Q1, we've captured, as of Q1 of 2025, we've captured a little over 1.8 million in equity that's been realized.
That's like over 10 years of pay in your old life.
Yeah. Now we've got, I would say, probably another $3 or $4 million in equity that is still in inventory.
That's another 30 years of work in your old life. You have now produced in about a year, about 40 years of your old productivity value.
That's about right. Yeah, that's about right.
Oh my God. So selfishly, I have a lot of pride there are a few guys that I've worked with in the last couple of years that have been as productive as you, that came from a real estate background. They're earning their living in real estate and said, I want to go from good to better. And our coaching program does a terrible job of taking someone outside of real estate into it. But from good to better, we're pretty good at that.
Yeah.
And again, selfishly, there's so much pride that I have when I see this, because you make some of the comments that I say all the time that I truly believe, and you're a bright guy and you're independent and you don't need someone to tell you what to do. And that's not what happened. What happens is you came in and you said, man, I think this makes sense. I think I can put my spin on it. And I like these guidelines and this outline, and I'm going to follow that and run with it. And what's just insane to me is the productivity that you guys are having in the first year or 2 years took me 5 or 6 years, because there was no one to show me, no one to teach me. I know my head from my butt, and I just had to struggle and fight. And but by the time I hit about year 6 or 7, I was having what you're having the experience now.
Okay.
So It's neat though to see you guys in a year or two. And I'm thinking, this guy went from figuring out how to pay the bills to like something totally different.
Oh, that's the honest to God truth, man. I'm a young man. I've got 4 kids. I'm 31. My oldest kid is going into high school next year. So
you were trying to figure out how to pay the bills, and you don't give a fuck now.
Nope. I really don't. It's man, not only am I like, I'm able to pay back my dad because he's a partner in our business. I'm able to pay him back, which I'll never really get the full opportunity to do, right? It's more than just money.
Yeah. Your dad is being paid back by being proud of his son doing something like this.
I agree. I think so. And I do think that my dad is proud. I'm really proud to still be in business with him. I think he might have gotten the idea at some point that I wanted him to retire because I was sick of being in business with him. That's not the case. I want him to retire because he deserves it. But really what this comes down to is, this has given me an opportunity to be creative and earn an income that like my family deserves, right? Like this is something that they deserved out of me for a long time, and I was just trying to figure out a way how to do it. I've been looking for this. I didn't know what it was, but I've been looking for this for over a decade.
That's special, though, as a man. Your family gets this. Your wife gets this. You get to look at your wife and say, I don't know if you'll ever say it. I've never really said this, but I told you so. I knew I believe this was going to happen. I wanted this for you. Here it is. You guys get to experience this.
She knew it before I did. She knew, like it. That's one of the, I think, beautiful things about our marriage is that, like, she
bought in.
Oh, she knew this. She knew this was going to happen long before I did. And man, I tell you, the conversation I had with her, whenever Q3 of 2024, is that right, or 2023? Whenever the market fell out on us real bad.
Oh yeah, that was like a year ago.
That was 2023, right? Yeah, right before I signed up for the coaching program. When you and I spoke, and I told her I was about to rip a $30,000 check.
She was like, "What are you doing?"
Biggest investment of money in non-tangible value I'd ever made.
Oh, wow.
Ever. I've never bought into something.
This is 4 months of education, and it's some dude yapping, and that's it. Hope it works.
It was a hard sell. I want to say that was probably like maybe our entire savings at that point was going into, keep in mind, Q3 of 2023, the market fell out. I felt like I forgot how to earn money. Wholesaling wasn't working. Houses weren't, I couldn't sell a deal at 80% minus repairs anymore.
You felt like you lost your touch, but the market's just changed. Everybody lost their touch.
That's how it felt. And my wife and I had a really, really tough conversation. And fortunately, my wife gives me the grace to let me do things and ask for forgiveness. In this case, that's what it was. It's like, hey, I not only am I going to rip this check, like I think I already committed to rip this check.
I already said I'm gonna. Can't please.
But I think it's gonna work out, and I'm glad it did, because I was able to really see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like you said, I could imagine that this vertical, this business strategy would have been really, really difficult to approach if I'd never done real estate before. I think I needed to fail at everything I failed at and succeed at everything I had succeeded at up until that point to be able to hit the ground running with this and really be successful right away.
That's fair. We don't let people that come into it that don't have any experience in real estate. I want people to be earning a living full time or most of it in real estate.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of guys that run coaching programs that'll take anybody's money and they'll go meet some grandma at the Target parking lot and help her get her credit card limit up and put her in the program.
Right.
That lady that's the worst answer for her. And I don't want to be that guy. but we've had a much higher rate of success by taking folks like you and doing an interview. And the interview isn't, we're just trying to make it feel like we're picking you and it's like some sales manipulation.
Sure.
I just want to make sure these folks have it together. They're going to put in the time. They know what the expectation is. They can pay for it, and they've earned a living in real estate. So they got the foundation. And you fit that criteria. So I'm like, this guy's a much greater probability of success, which is why our program does.
So I'm sure it'll come off like pretty strongly in all of this, how incredibly appreciative I am of you. But just to like kind of give you your credit, I think up until that point, we'd maybe had like a handful of conversations. But I remember our interview. You gave me 2 hours of your time. And like, it wasn't just an interview. You were like coaching me through what I needed to be doing. I think about 30, 45 minutes into the interview, we had finished the interview. And then I was just asking you questions about what it was I could do to get started. And as a result, like I think I came into the coaching program with 2 deals because I was so anxious to get started. And I just asked like, man, what can I be doing? Where can I go? And you gave me like an hour and a half education for free that I probably could have like run with at that point. In fact, I've like met other people through your community that I can see that that's kind of what they're doing. They're just taking some nuggets where they can get them and they're going and trying to apply on their own. And it's like, good for you, man. That's great. Like you'll get something out of it. It's for sure there. But I don't think I would have been able to figure this out. I learned really early on in my real estate career that there's absolutely 0 sense reinventing the wheel. It like doesn't make sense to do. There's typically someone who's been there before.
Slow and hard, and you can make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, and that's expensive.
I know that. Yeah. Chris, you support your wife and your parents with a business that most people don't understand. How do you carry that kind of weight?
It's really fun. It makes me really boring at parties. It's very difficult to explain to people what it is that I do.
Does anybody want to talk about real estate here?
Yeah.
Who wants to talk?
I can like typically see like, it's like this combination of like glowing pride and then just totally blanking out. Anytime someone asks me about what I do or real estate in general, my wife will just pridefully glaze over. Because she's like, I've heard this conversation 10,000 times.
It's so special. It's so huge. It's changed your life so much though. Yeah. It means so much and you're extremely focused.
I'm just very excited about it. It's been so amazing. When I first got into real estate, I was not excited about this. This was a legitimate fallback. I was doing this because I needed a way to make money. School wasn't doing it. I couldn't be a bartender forever. That wasn't going to provide for my family. Give them I'm telling you, I was looking for something like this. I thought real estate was it from the beginning. It was something that I was regretfully falling back onto because it's what Daddy did.
It's either be a realtor or go work in a strip club. I'm down to these two.
And strip club wasn't working out, man. I didn't have the chops for it. But yeah, no, I'm extremely proud. I'm extremely proud. I have gnarly imposter syndrome, and
that passes. I understand what that's like.
It started to being able to make hires, bring people on. We just recently hired a new administrator. We're changing her life. We brought on our researcher. I feel like I'm changing her life. My agents, they've managed to make incomes over the last year that young men their age won't see for another 10 years working a corporate ladder. And it's been amazing. Like one of my agents is getting married in the fall. One of my agents just had their first kid a year ago. One of my agents is getting ready to propose to his girlfriend. Hopefully she doesn't watch this podcast. It's really just one of my the image that I have of being able to run a business is being able to attract people that really want to get excited, really want to do this, and giving me an opportunity to change their lives the way this has changed mine.
You glow though, about this. It's easy to see. It comes out, and that's very attractive to people. As I was starting to recruit, I was concerned because it worked out for me, but if it didn't work out for this guy and this guy and this guy as they came on, I'm like, oh crap, I'm going to be letting them down.
Oh, I feel personally responsible for everybody's success.
Right, but that radiates.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how if you're not already, or you probably are, but it will develop more as the central figure in the operation that people will look up to, they'll admire, they want to be like. And that's a very important thing to have in a company because if the person who owns a company isn't that or like that,
right,
it's just not a special place. And I feel like in our operation, we have that. And I think you're probably starting to have that.
I am. The typical roadblocks that I can't say that running a business is all sunshine and rainbows.
No.
Nothing is.
We're talking about the fun stuff in a little while. I'm going to ask you about the other headaches.
Oh, I let 2-3 of my employees go from the first summit And man, that first summit that we went to, I had one of the guys that worked for me at that point who was falling asleep during it. I let him go the next day. It sucked because I loved him. I loved that kid, but he was a kid and he just didn't have
you,
this
but
in
this
him.
ain't for you.
Yeah, that's it. And same thing, like feeling personally responsible for his success and watching him fail under my mentorship was like, man, I need you. I need you to go find another job, please.
That's very fair. Chris, you said your top skill is pure perseverance. What's the one deal that could have broken somebody else, but instead made you six figures?
It wasn't my first deal. It was actually my second deal closed in the coaching program. I made the original call to her on April 1st of 2024, April Fool's Day, almost exactly a year ago.
I remember.
It was I remember because it was the day that I would normally as an agent call expireds. I was calling expireds, but that day instead, I went off of what you told me to call, which was tax delinquent leads. I had gotten access to a tax delinquent lawsuit in Tarrant County. It was somewhat interesting. Looking back on it, it had none of the indicators that we would typically look for. It was 1 year delinquent. There's one person on title, didn't appear to be deceased. Couldn't find anything about her.
You know what else, though? It's very low hurdles.
Very low hurdles. Very low hurdles. That she was an unmarried lady. Her husband had predeceased her by a couple of years. She had no natural-born children, no siblings. Her next closest kin per an intestate succession tree, meaning her next closest owners that would have inherited this property from her after the fact, were first cousins once removed all up in the Northeast that didn't know her name because her mom had moved her down to Texas at such a young age to remove her from that family.
Intentionally.
Intentionally. They didn't know she existed.
Wow.
And there ultimately were 38 owners on that property. And I wouldn't let it go, which now I do. I know that that's a tendency, and as a result, I coach my agents that work for me. We make strategy decisions on when to put a deal on the back burner and when to call it dead, because there is a tendency to like hold on to things that maybe need to be passed on. But this was an exception to the rule, and we were able to kind of circumnavigate 38 biological potential owners and realize that really the best suited fit was a stepdaughter.
Why was that best? Why was she? Because what's legal and what's not legal is a stark line.
It is. And so this was a really perfect example of where the true intention of ownership really wouldn't have made sense. It would almost have been like those 38 biological owners, potential owners, were almost stealing the inheritance of a young girl.
Oh, because she was raised by somebody as their own.
Correct.
So it's what do you call it? It's like adoption by estoppel?
Essentially, yeah. Layman's terms, we've been calling it common law adoption.
Got it.
Stepmom.
That's easier to understand.
Yeah, stepmom and dad got married when she was 3 years old. She was raised by this family. She was raised by this woman. And unfortunately, she didn't inherit per the will of her father. Her father wanted everything to go to his wife, understandably so. And when she passed away, she didn't have anybody under her to leave it to. And she did, unfortunately, die due to suicide. And it didn't appear to us that she did good estate planning. And so it wasn't thought through by her to leave behind a will. And so 2 years after her death, we were able to locate this deal through the help of the deceased's sister-in-law, who had also been trying to solve this problem. We took a risk. And we went to the stepdaughter and said, listen, we can't give you much because this may or may not work.
This might blow up.
This might.
Even if those other people shouldn't be the owners, they could file a lawsuit. They could make a claim.
Absolutely.
They could pose a fight. They could go occupy the house.
Yep.
And now it's going to be very expensive to prove what's true.
Exactly.
Lots of testimony, lots of time.
Yep. And then we had two options. We were either in a spot where we could attempt to prove that the stepdaughter had an ownership from her stepmother, and failing that, going back to our biological tree, and seeing if those people were the proper owners of the property, and simultaneously alleviating the risk and liability of the property because it's sitting vacant. If somebody walks in there and the house caves in on them, that's a serious liability for people. And so, in this situation, we were able to pay the gal. She had a number that was going to make her happy. She had some specific needs she needed taken care of. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we were able to be all in expenses and all in the property about $13,000, $14,000. And we were able to sell that property with doing little to it. I cleared it out. I spent a couple $1,000s just clearing it and getting it empty. We sold it for $375,000.
Damn, what a lick.
Yeah.
After paying taxes.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Probably some property taxes. You got escrow fees, maybe some realtor commissions for a buyer, maybe not. I don't know. Cost to acquire, $300,000 net.
Yep. Yeah, more
So
like about 350.
That's what a doctor makes within the first couple of years out of med school.
Yep. in one deal. Yeah.
It's incredible.
That one, my dad was going through some health issues at the time. That was really early on in the coaching program. I could still tear up about that deal, man. That one was like a life-changing deal.
That one probably changed your life more than one you might do in the next couple of years as $500,000 or $1 million. That was a bigger deal.
It really was. It was a proof of concept. We solved a problem that was otherwise unsolvable.
You probably tripled your net worth in one deal at the time.
I think so.
Actually, maybe that was all of your net worth at the time.
we had just closed another six-figure deal about the week before that from the program that was also relatively simple. It was complex, but not complicated.
I've got to produce personal financials for our banks annually. And what I would encourage you to do is I'll send you my format that I have. Just go fill it out. There's a bunch of blanks and you'll see it and understand what to do. But I fill that out annually and either the last day of December or date at the first day of January and make sure my bank statements match that. And it's fun to watch that because I've got it for 15 or 16 years now, 3 or 4 years of being employed at the energy business and then self-employment for about 10 years.
Okay.
So that's 13, 14 years, yeah. Anyway, you're going like this and then you get this new company and, you kind of flutter and do like that. And then it hits this period that it really just, it's that like hockey stick growth pattern type thing. And I think you're going to see something exactly like that. So I'd tell you, do that personal financial every year. You're going to eventually need it anyway.
Right.
But having that record is cool to go back and look over time. But I think we really undervalue what we're capable of. A guy that I was talking with yesterday he was telling me that he writes a letter every year in January that's dated December, and he's writing about what the year was. He's basically manifesting his goals.
Sure.
And every year he says, man, the last couple of years, halfway through the year, I go back and want to rewrite it. And we were talking about being humble, not being cocky or not overvaluing ourselves. But I said, dude, halfway through the year, multiple years, you're having to redo this. Let me tell you a story. And I told him the story about my annual distribution. The goal is to be $1 million. I put that check in the drawer, pulled it out a couple of years ago and realized, oh, wow, this is my first quarter draw, not a whole year's draw.
Right.
And when I realized that, I had to look in the mirror and be honest with myself and say, I'm not being cocky or, arrogant or whatever. This is what's happening and I need to embrace it. And there's no more imposter syndrome going on here.
Sure.
This is it. So take heed and get in gear. And I encouraged him to start writing his letter much more aggressively.
Right.
So you're like at the precipice of that happening. So I would like you to listen to both of those things and do those exercises.
Yeah, I'd be excited too, man. This last year has been kind of awe-striking. Like I wasn't making bad money. Like I was doing better than most real estate professionals. I was probably doing better than the average wholesaler. I was doing way better than the average realtor.
Yeah.
But man, just this last year has been really, really incredible. This has been it's what I imagined, 10 years in business would have looked like.
Would happen. But you don't know, though. It's like you believe it. You know you have it in you. You want to feel like it's going to happen. You get the confidence in yourself. But until those things really happen, that's when you feel like you're lying to yourself.
Right.
And you're not sure, is it ever really going to happen? And some people, opportunity and preparation and timing don't actually align. It doesn't happen.
Right.
But it did for you.
Yeah, it did. And I would say a lot of it had to do with getting excited about this was a huge component of it. Because that was, I know you talked earlier about how it's kind of uncommon to have someone just get into it and start earning and do this at a high level really quickly. Part of it was just preparation, right? I feel like my whole career had kind of prepared me and given me the education I needed to be able to take this and run with it.
Yeah.
The other part of it was just that this is so exciting and so exhilarating and fun that I cared. There was really nothing sexy about showing homes and holding open houses. It just was. It was.
A lot of people would say there's not about doing deed record research and making offers to wacky people, but when you can find something that's complicated that other people can't do, you can be good at and earn a lot of money, it becomes sexy, it becomes exciting,
Absolutely.
like it becomes passionate.
It absolutely does. And I think that's what it is. I think that it's just just kind of aligned with like the nerdier side of me. This really kind of like, it grabbed my attention. It's something that, because, I actually even came to your commercial wholesaling
That's right.
Class a couple of years ago. That was actually how we originally came into contact with one another.
That's right.
And really that was because my whole like career as a real estate agent was like, I wanted to get into commercial. And there was so many roadblocks to get into commercial. But going from residential realtor to commercial broker, there's a really thick, bold line in between those two people. It's not an
big barriers to entry.
Huge barriers of entry. And
so you spent like $40,000 with education with me, but would you look back? Would you spend that again?
If I could get
should I up my price?
No, probably. If I could get the return on investment for every dollar I've spent with you, I would spend every dollar I made. Yeah, no, it's been significant, and it's also not the first time I've paid for coaching. I've gotten good coaching in the past. I've paid for other programs that I spent $10,000 on, and I won't drop the name, but I spent $10,000 on that, and that was $10,000 down the toilet.
There's a lot of bad out there, man. There's a lot that doesn't work as well.
It was a combination of the methodology, the actual value, and the coaching and the mentorship. One of the things that I really appreciated about what you guys had to offer us was that, maybe I couldn't always get you on the phone for one reason or another, but there was Kyle, there was Ryan. Like,
support was there.
The support was incredible. And those guys they knew what they were talking about, right? And being able to problem solve that deal that we talked about, we made $350,000. I was on the phone with Kyle, and he was walking me through because I needed help. I needed help just wrapping my head around what an affidavit of heirship looked like with 35 dead people on it, or with 35 heirs on it. I needed an idea.
They're not designed to have that many people on it.
They're not. But just having one that resulted in that many owners was something that was really, really difficult for me to wrap my head around. And he was the one who kind of sat back and said, "Wait, hold on a minute. Let me see your tree."
Oh.
And I can't take full credit and say that was even my creativity or my idea. That was a nugget of information that I would not have known if it weren't for the coaching program.
Love that. Yeah. I love that. So you've retired your wife. You're the sole breadwinner. You provide a livelihood for your parents. That's a weight most people never feel. What does that responsibility really feel like day to day?
I'm actually very proud of it. It's something that it's difficult, man, because I think growing up, I always had this kind of perception of what it was to be a provider. And I think as time went on, becoming a father, getting married, buying a house, I think retiring my wife was a really big indicator, because I never imagined that at 31, I would be able to provide for my dad's company more in a year than he was able to do on his own at his max. Like, his max production in real estate is half of what I pay into him now. Like, that didn't occur to me. My first real point of pride was being able to like keep my lights on, not go to the bank of dad and say, "Dad, help me out. My kids are hungry. Like, I need
first
to feed
200-300
them."
are the biggest. After that, it changes less.
It was. I'm really proud. I'm really proud.
You should be.
I am really, really grateful that my wife stuck it out with me this long. And really, as far as like providing any type of livelihood for my parents, like my dad was there for me through some really tough times. We were really young parents. We started off really poor. He supported me in ways that like I really, maybe honestly didn't deserve. He might have even had done me a favor if he had cut me off sooner.
Yeah.
But really, there were times that as a father, I was really letting my wife and kids down, just because I was young, I was inexperienced, and I was, as much as I was trying my damnedest, like, it was really, really difficult to support a family of five. A family of 5 originally, and then 6 pretty quickly after that. As like a 22-year-old, I was a father of 4 at 22.
Oh, gosh.
It was really difficult, and even I remember the first year I made like $75,000. I got my 1099 in my hand.
That don't go around all
like,
those people, man.
How did I make $75,000 and I was still broke 100% of the year? And being able to see my 1099 from this last year, it's like, that is unbelievable. It was just absolutely insane to see the difference in. No, I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful. I'll never be able to really like fully pay my dad back for the support that he gave me. I'll never be able to like really hit what I imagined is what my wife actually truly deserves out of me. So I just keep trying. It feels really good to like be able to go to sleep at night knowing that I'm not failing them anymore.
Wow. You're taking a really honest look and being willing to access like those feelings
Yeah.
and not hide from them. A lot of people are embarrassed about those feelings. A lot of people have them. I've had them before.
Yeah.
Everyone around has.
Sure.
Accessing them, confronting them,
Sure.
talking about them, that's really hard. And it's even harder when those feelings are still real.
Oh, yeah.
When you get beyond that and they're now in hindsight, it's easier and kind of freeing to be able to
100%.
go through that.
Oh, yeah. I would say like once I started getting to a position, I'd say it's probably been about 5 years that I've felt self-sufficient, but not successful, right? Like self-sufficient and success are two different things. Self-sufficient for 5 years was something I probably could have done indefinitely. I would have been disappointed in myself. I think my wife would have maybe been disappointed in me in the long run. I don't know. But yeah, man, those first 5-6 years of this career, they were really tough. And as embarrassing as they were at the time, because you're right, they were absolutely really embarrassing.
You're a man. You got some pride and ego. I don't care who you are. You got it.
Just taking my shitty F-150 to places, having to get like valeted and like, oh my God, please don't get in my car. This thing cost me like $1,500. Don't judge me.
You think you're worth about as much as the car you pulled up in.
It was so difficult not to feel that way, and across the board, just with
So
so
you
many
flew in
things.
a plane, and not a commercial plane.
No, yeah, I flew myself down. No, things have changed really dramatically, really quickly. But it's all been little things that I've had an opportunity to learn and fail and learn and fail. So there's really no one part of the success that I feel now that I like take for granted. It's all been really one big kick in the face after another. But being able to figure something out, getting passionate about something again, being able to find something that excites me, find something that I can imagine myself doing. Because there's a part of me that started to doubt that real estate was going to be a longevity career, that the industry was going to change.
Because the way it wasn't working for you at the moment.
It really wasn't, especially with NAR lawsuits changing the way the dynamics that realtors were could potentially earn an income. And also seeing how much market volatility changed. I was a summer baby as far as real estate's concerned. I got into real estate in 2014, 2015. All I saw was an amazing seller's market where selling a house was as easy as fogging a glass.
You hadn't seen the other side.
And I was excited for things to change, but I was not prepared. I was not as prepared as I'd wanted to be. And this was an ultimate hedge on the market that I wasn't expecting to find when I found it. But being able to get into deals for, I think our average running right now is most of the properties that we're buying right now is like right at 20 to 25 cents on the dollar. So it's really hard for the market to tank us out of it. But I'm still cautious of it. I'm still cautious. Still cautious.
When interest rates got funky and shot upwards about a year and a half ago, we had a fair amount of inventory. And I remember I started to watch the cash balances across the company shrink, and days on market and our inventory was growing. I thought, oh my gosh. But I also recall we have a very low price
entry.
Yeah. So I went back and made everybody slash prices, slash them.
Yeah.
So we were able to move all that inventory, and we had to keep prices a little bit lower. Instead of selling them for 90, 95 cents on the dollar, on the retail dollar, we were down to 70 cents, 75 cents on the retail dollar.
Sure.
And other people's inventory would sit, and ours would still move quickly in those neighborhoods. So we shrunk our margin a little bit, but because we had so much of it, we had the flexibility in a bad market to discount and continue to move inventory.
Yep.
Many businesses can't do that because their margins are so small.
Sure.
And to me, that was more important than having bigger margins because it meant a time where people were struggling. We just made a little less.
Yeah. Yeah, which I'm comfortable with. Making a little less is a lot better than making nothing. And there was a point there where I really worried that like making nothing was going to have to be the new option.
God. So we've talked so far about what got you to here, to today.
Yeah.
We talked about some really awesome deals. We talked about how life has changed. Why don't you tell me about what your operation looks like today?
Yeah. So I oversee 3 sales agents. I have like a hard time determining what I would call them, but they're essentially 3 replications of me.
Sales-ish.
Yeah, right. So their job is to find deals and buy equity, right? they're supported by, we have an administrator. We unfortunately did just have a little bit of turnover there, but thankfully I think we made a really, really good hire. She's just taken to it extremely quickly. And she handles a lot of our back end, our deed filing, our document preparation, our expense tracking, all that kind of stuff. And we also have a dedicated researcher. She's full-time, remote.
That's nice.
She's really, really good at doing airship, finding people, determining who's connected to who had however many children, honestly, there are sometimes that she's too good at it, and we'll send her a file that we thought was 6 owners, and she turned up 10 more. It's like, Laura, I'm glad you found them.
But dang it.
Because where would we be without you? But dang, I was really hoping this was less complex. But that full-time researcher has been a real game changer for me and the sales team. It's allowed me to function more as a sales manager, which is something that is probably going to be my next hire because...
that's tricky. I think that's very tricky.
I think so too. But right now...
Wait, so you have that person as a researcher, 3 sales.
Yep.
And you said an administrative person?
Yep, and then we have...
That's 5.
Yeah, we have 5, and then a VA that helps us with our data manipulation. We also have a contract programmer that helps us with our Salesforce development. Our Salesforce and our CRM is kind of like a living creature. It changes as we change, and we end up, as we come up with new ideas, new organizational methods to keep track of our deals, because we've gone from, I used to have, if I had 5 contracts on the board, I'm doing well. Right now, I think we have like 20 deals in inventory.
That's a lot.
It's
You know where I think you're going to actually, with that sales, that role that manages those people, that's probably one of the trickiest to hire of all, in my opinion.
I agree.
Because there's so much of your personality and your experience and your creativity that directs what they do. And none of them are 3, 4, 5 years experience. Heck, you're not, but you figured out how to do it. So you have like the golden touch, so to speak.
Right.
But putting a person in that place is going to be very hard. Even a lot of our partners here, they kind of maintain a big part of that role.
Sure.
And almost everything else, like paying bills, doing reports, just almost anything else gets pushed to other administrative people. So their role really narrows to almost that. That's a really hard one to swap.
I would say that person will likely end up being one of my sales agents moving into like just a more
promotional role.
Yeah, a promotional role. Because it does need to be somebody that understands this really effectively. Because right now I'm playing quarterback and team manager.
That's hard.
And it is. It's. I've essentially been looking at. I probably could have continued to do this solo, but
God, it gets tiring.
It's extremely exhausting, and you realize that you're doing like most business, like most businesses in entrepreneurship. Like one entrepreneur is doing 8 jobs at least at any given time, and so I'm working on compartmentalizing those jobs into different facets. Not to mention the fact that I still co-operate my real estate brokerage with my dad.
Y'all are still doing retail work.
Still exists, absolutely. And I would say that the retail work that I do now,
you mean charity work,
is almost charity work. Yeah, there is a part of it that is like I will do favors for friends and family. And there's also we retail dispose of all of our investment assets.
Yeah.
So that avenue, that business still has validity. It still has a reason to keep alive and exist. And my brother and my dad still operate as full-time retail agents as well. So my dad less so. I think he's kind of in the same boat. If somebody comes to him and says, "Hey, please sell my house for me," he's not going to tell them no.
Yeah.
But my brother, for the most part, is 100% retail agent. And so, that company still exists. It still requires oversight. I'm still one of the supervisors for that. My brother started to hire some agents under him as well. So that exists. It has a valid reason for existing, but it is definitely one of those things that is more of like a passion project. That Beery Nice Homes brokerage will stay alive forever and ever. But right now, that's not my income source.
You said you guys like to go to the retail market for your sales.
Yeah.
We do that too. Tell me what that looks like. I bet a lot of the listeners don't know why you do that. So you say why, and then kind of say what that process looks like.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think investment grade real estate that's not perfect move-in ready isn't right for MLS.
I would say that there's truth to that. There is truth there. There is a lot of the deals that we end up selling that we'll put on MLS and still end up selling in off-market channels. We don't preclude that. But one of the things that is nice about the MLS is that the exposure that it provides is really paramount. There's not another exposure channel for real estate that compares with the multiple listing service.
Agreed.
Maybe there's some alternatives to that in the future. The market can change and things can change. But remember, real estate agency, real estate brokerage, the Texas Association of Realtors, these are institutions that are hundreds of years old. People have been thumbing through MLS books for decades. The typical buyer will absolutely see these properties as an opportunity. Now, our experienced A full-time investor or type A full-time investors looking for deals on the MLS exclusively? No.
No, but a lot of less sophisticated investors are looking for stuff on the MLS, and that's a good place. I frankly find that we get more dollars on average in that venue.
I'd say we probably take at least a 10% price drop to sell off market, at least.
That's fair. I would agree with that.
And I think generally that plays out because that was my experience when I was working in retail brokerage. Somebody tried to sell their house with a sign in the yard and sticking it on Zillow. They would make 10 to 15% less than they would if they let me list it for them. And that's what kept me in business. That 10 to 15% justified what it was that I was going to charge them in commission. But no, I'd say that the multiple listing service and real estate brokerage in general, there's an adage that I would use when I was talking to these folks that would want to sell their house for sale by owner. If you take a Rolex watch and you put it in the case with the receipt and you try to sell it at a garage sale, what is the likelihood that you're going to get retail value for that watch? Really unlikely. Doesn't matter how new it is, how used it is, doesn't matter. Now, if you take that same watch with the receipt in the box and you take it to a jeweler, what are the chances that someone's going to walk in there and tell that jeweler that they'll pay them $5,000 less than sticker price? It's not the same. There's something about putting something on the market that creates the imagery that the sale is serious, the sticker price is serious. That
buyers are coming to that venue because they're prepared and ready and active.
Absolutely. Off-market channels are valuable. We use them frequently. I have really, really good off-market disposition agents that we work and partner with on a very regular basis. But it's different water. It's different water to swim in.
That's fair. So some of this sounds like all rainbows and beautiful and life has changed. And I made a lot of money and I'm happy and I'm fulfilled and all this stuff. But like there's other stuff like inventory management, cash flow management, employee HR related problems.
Sure.
Let's talk about the other part of this business, those parts of it. What kind of, chinks in the chain have you seen in this last year as things have taken off?
It's extremely difficult to hire because this is...
Why?
This is not... It's hard to hire for a job position that you're doing and you don't really know how to explain too well.
And no one has experience in that job because they don't exist out there.
Exactly. There's really not anybody I've found that has had direct one-to-one experience in this. We've always had translatable experience, but it takes my vision in saying like, hey, what is it that you currently do? Okay, I can see how you being good at that means that you'll be good at this. That's how we found our researcher. Our researcher, she was a legal assistant, and
that's a perfect person with a background for that, though.
Absolutely. And when she told me what it was she did on a daily basis, I was like, oh,
zing.
You need to come work for me, please. It took 6 months of begging her to do it, but she finally did it. Same thing with our administrator. Our administrator now was an administrator for the city of Arlington. That was a great hire. The one that's
a hardcore administrator role.
Hardcore. But she's great. She's enthusiastic. She's great at learning, and she's really, really happy to not work for a municipality anymore. So, there's benefits that go there. The sales side is extremely difficult. All three of my sales agents have very little experience in real estate sales. One of them is a mortgage broker. Former mortgage broker. That sales, I would say, like of my guys, he's the one who's come to me with the most refined sales skill. The other two guys, we've had to work actively to refine it. One of them came to me. He actually originally approached me about real estate many years ago, ended up getting his real estate license, went and kind of like tried the Keller Williams route, even though I offered to hire him and he basically turned me down. A year later, he came back and said, hey, I'd rather do what you're doing. Glad he did because now he's making, multiple six figures and he's doing a great job with his life. But his, I would say same deal. He came to me pretty green in real estate in general. And then his cousin actually came to work for me as well. Zero real estate experience. That has been one of the biggest hurdles for me is that it's nice to have someone with no bad habits, because
Yeah.
real estate experience is not all what it's cracked up to be. Sometimes real estate experience would be a detractor. Like I need to unteach you. I need you to unlearn all these other things that you thought were correct,
Yeah.
because they're not going to serve you doing this.
It's funny. So when you mention that, it makes me think, where are people from? I got a guy that was a chef. I got a guy that was a manager at an auto parts store.
Yep.
Another dude did remodeling for a contractor, but wasn't really real estate. It was construction.
Yep.
We look for attitude, aptitude, and bandwidth.
That's it.
I'm not really caring if they have experience in this or adjacent. I need a person who's honest, hardworking, can get a lot of things done.
Yeah.
And they got to be bright.
They got to be bright. They got to be bright. That's really the biggest thing, is finding people who are bright. It's easy to get excited about this.
Yeah.
It is. It's really easy to get excited about this, especially when you see some of the profit margins, but it's been very, very difficult to match that excitement with, I wouldn't even say like intelligence. You don't have to be smart. You just have to be sharp. If you're sharp, if you can pick things up fast, if you can learn, you can turn on a dime, if you can be creative and problem solve, it's been great. Those people are not easy to find. They are typically, so far my experience has been, they're happy where they are generally, because they've fought to get wherever they are. So pulling them from where they are,
it's tough.
it is tough.
Sounds like.
It is tough. I would say the other thing, aside from the fact that it's difficult to hire for this, access to capital.
Man, I was thinking about my next thing, and I was going to ask you, let's talk about cash flow, capital management.
This is 100% our cash.
Why is that? Everybody says use debt. Leverage is better to build a business. That's what they say.
That's generally true. And I would say like my business up until this business model has been extremely debt heavy. We were using our capital as to help us get access to that leverage as down payment, as against hard money loans and things like that.
In inventory. You could go through that though. So it could take you, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years to earn, pay taxes, live on, retain, and get to the point where you got 5, 6, 7 million in cash.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this. So this will be your last year's tax return will have improved from the year before. This year should look really good.
Right.
As soon as you get your tax return filed for the 2025 year, I would go to your local bank, get a credit line, even if it's not massive, whatever the fuck they'll give you, take it.
Yeah.
And every quarter go to them and ask them for an increase.
Yeah.
And try to push that as much as you can, because the credit line they'll want you to personally guarantee it, but it's not collateralized by real estate.
Right.
So that way you can use debt
Right.
on this stuff.
Okay.
Otherwise, I mean, you got your one guy who will do it, but most people won't want a loan on shit that can't get insured.
Yeah. You might.
I mean, I've really thought in the last year of a way to do that. It's not like if I did it for like 10% like hard money lenders,
Right. It's not as attractive.
Yeah, I might say something like, I want 20% of the deal or something. What would that look like? How much capital would I put out there to work? How would I process that? Like, there'd be like a deal sheet that you got to submit that says, what are the problems? What's it worth? What do you think the expenses are? What do you think the timeline's going to be? And you say, okay, it's got to like fit a certain metric.
Right.
So that I would do it, because I don't want it to be a deal that's like a fucking 3-year deal,
Yeah, no, for sure not.
But I've asked myself, because there's no real lenders in the space, like, what does that look like? Maybe there's something there. I don't know. As more people get through the coaching program, start to build successful businesses. Yeah. I'm asking, how do I, what can I do
capitalize on that? Yeah. Yeah, you think you're going to get as many people out of class 2 as you did in class 1 that are coming out of this hardcore operators?
Man, do you know Alan, what's his last name? Q. Young Hispanic kid, shaved head, fucking kid's like 25.
Oh, shit.
He got he's been flipping land.
Yeah.
And he got 2 deals right after he done the educational piece and started the deal support and reviewing. 2 deals, $150,000 is the sales price. He's in them for like 30, so they're both $100K nets, like right off the bat.
That's awesome.
Some of these people are still trying to like figure out their market and put together their plan. This motherfucker's
That's what
Ajay
was telling me. Yeah.
Ajay's moved fast because he's good at sales. He knows real estate. Yeah. And I think because he's got close access to you, he's moved faster. Yeah. Than a lot of people. I think his pipeline's moved really quickly.
Yeah, no, it is. They've got great stuff. We're about to close on one right now. I mean, they're going to clear multiple 6 figures like very quickly.
For their share.
Yeah, absolutely.
Damn.
Yeah.
We just finished the educational piece and we're like a week into the deal support and review. So I'm about to start seeing how it's developing.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's going to actually take to it?
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is capitalization in your business, because in these businesses, you can't use traditional bank credit or hard money loans because you can't get
Right.
title insurance on most of this stuff. So how does that look like? How are you managing? Because while you start to earn a lot of money quickly, businesses need lots of cash.
Yeah, it's our bank accounts. We're throwing our bank account at everything that we do. I had the foresight.
Have you ever had to manage cash this closely, even when you're broke?
You know, no, not this closely, because typically I would say prior to this, I had the foresight a couple years ago to raise capital for our wholesaling and flipping business, just because I saw how much money we were spending on hard money lenders. And so I wanted to offset that as much as we could. I didn't really want to be borrowing construction fees and operating costs from hard money lenders. It was really expensive. The origination fees were getting pretty high, and they were also pretty restrictive as far as what they would budget for. And so it helped soften our relationship, or it helped strengthen our relationship with hard money lenders to borrow less from them. Like, hey, on this deal where I would normally borrow like $100,000 for the purchase price and another 40 for the rehab budget, give me 60 and I'll cover the rest. And so that was a really successful model for us there for a while, because like I said, it maintained that relationship. Access to capital was a lot easier. But
The
now
lender's risk is lower because they have more coverage. So they like that. Plus,
We're more
they feel
in the
better
deal.
with you because you're more pregnant with that baby.
Absolutely. And so now that we have basically 100% financial responsibility for these deals, it means that I'm better about maintaining all my expenses. I'm better at making sure that what we put into it, we're getting back out. I'm also paying much, much closer attention onto the time value of money, right? The cost, what is it? Opportunity cost.
Yeah.
Opportunity cost is a big thing I'd never really had much issue with before. Because
These are business lessons. The other stuff is real estate, technical deal related.
No.
But now to support that, you're having to look at these business things.
every dollar I spend on this deal is a dollar I can't spend on that one. And that's a really big, important lesson that we've had to learn. And there are a couple of deals that we have under our belt so far that we've intentionally paid for educations, right? We knew going into it like, hey, this isn't the sexiest deal in the world. This isn't a big fat margin, but the methodology for solving this specific problem will give us experience that'll allow us to make more money in the future.
I see this usefulness.
Yeah, right. Like, we've never had an opportunity to finish a probate for someone else before. Let's try this. Let's take this one on, take over the probate and actually go through the process of finishing it. If we can get to the other side of this, maybe we break even, maybe we even lose a little bit, but it's a much cheaper education than it would be to try this on a deal that actually had really, really big spread on it that we end up fumbling or having to pass on because we didn't know.
You'll be able to talk through that process with somebody who needs that help now a lot differently, instead of, we've never done it, but we're going to call our lawyer.
Yeah.
Well, now you can just talk right through it, and you go back to the beginning of the confidence, that's how you build a rapport.
Well, you and I have talked about this before. It's every new thing that I learn in this case has been a new way for me to earn money. Every new problem I learn how to solve is a new way to earn money. And so
That's powerful.
It's been phenomenal because I feel
Get smart as you can, as fast as you can.
exactly.
Because you get paid.
Yeah, which means run into as many problems as you can as quickly as possible and figure out how to solve them or know somebody who does. But no, managing capital has been, I wouldn't say it's a problem, but it is a very, very active part of what I'm doing in my business now. And I think that that's really one of the biggest values that I bring to my team and my agents is, you guys don't worry about the money. You guys go find deals.
Right,
I'll
that's their
help
job.
with strategy. I'll help with capital. You guys you go find these deals, isolate them, and then I'll talk you through them and how to get through them. I do miss being an active deal hustler because at the beginning of this, that's what I was, and admittedly, and I think my guys would admit this too. I think I'm better at it, but I think it's just because this is a skill that I've refined for many, many years, and now I get to apply it to this.
You must have it. There's a specific thing in a personality that loves that thrill, the chase, the hunt, the deal.
Right.
Kind of the thrill of the chase is greater than the kill. That's what you live for.
Exactly. Now, with that said, my guys are phenomenal. They're really good at it. They're
that's
learning
good.
fast. Yeah. But yeah, no, I do think you're right. It's a personality type, and just time and experience, man. I train jujitsu, and it's just one of those things that, someone who walks in on their first day is just not going to beat someone in their second year.
Yeah.
And I think sales is very much the same way. You'll have some rare exceptions that are really, really talented, and they'll be able to hold their own, go toe to toe, but they're not going to beat someone in their second year. Someone in their second year who's really good, who's really trained, who's really passionate about what they do is just better. And I think that continues to apply as time and energy goes into the skill set.
that makes me think of another piece of this, in the business part of it, not the deal technical part of it. Managing people, what's that look like now? Because when it's just you finding a deal, you behave how you want you to behave. And you don't get mad at you for behaving how you behave because that's what you expect.
Right.
Now you got half a dozen people here.
Is
it easy? Is it hard?
It's easy and hard. So the hard part was picking the people that I knew we could have these hard conversations with, and I could tell them I didn't like something, and they would say, yes, sir. That's tough.
You picked the right kind of people to work with you.
That's really what it was. And so the guys that I have right now, we have this mutual understanding is if they bring me something, I want it to work. I want it to work. I like for them, I feel personally responsible for their success, for that deal working. I want it to work. But when it doesn't, I tell them why, and they say, okay, and we move on to the next one. And
that's cool if they're not fighting upstream or causing a problem or just, frankly, you want those people to be good and you want them to have authority and autonomy and all these things. But there's also a time where you say, look, I'm not going to go over this anymore. I'm the dude who makes the final decision. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Drop it.
Yeah. And it is tough. And it comes with the counter respect of like, it takes a lot to get me to that point. There's been at least one deal that each one of my guys has brought me. And I'm like, I'll even tell them, like, I'm getting really close to saying this is a deal you need to move on from. And I won't, it's like, I'm not going to tell you that yet. I'm this close. And the reason that I don't like saying that to them is because there's a couple of deals that I should have moved on from myself when I was doing this, and I made hundreds of thousands of dollars.
But you have the ability to take on that because at the end of the day, buck stops with you. It's your money. If they screw up, it's your money, not his. Yeah. I got to this point where I would start telling guys, like they would push me. There's 2 guys in my office that'll push me hard on it.
Yeah.
I got to the point I'd say, you know what? I'll tell you what. In our shared company, I'm voting against it. But if you want to take it and put it in your own management company, I have no problem. Let's make a draw. Yeah. However much it costs, we'll make our draws. You take that money, put it in your management company, and you do it. That way I'm shielded from your risk.
Yeah.
And you know how many times they did it?
None. None. Yeah. No, and I think that's an important part about picking good partners. Even the employees that we have right now, we've had some turnover, hiring new people, having to find that right chemistry with people.
Yeah.
I do foresee it being more difficult as I kind of continue to climb and as the organization continues to develop under me. And that it is, right? Just the degrees of separation.
You radiating how much you love this and how enjoyable it is and how good you are at it.
Right.
You continuing to radiate that as long as you keep loving it like this will still help be probably one of the most important things in your group.
I hope so. I really do. Because I don't ever want to run a company that feels like it's some shell, that it's like something that I have because it funds my bank account. This is really something I'm passionate about and I enjoy. I'm very proud of it. So, I really do plan on keeping this an operation that feels like my baby for a long time. This is not something I'm doing. I had one of my guys is, like I said, he's a good salesman. He has a good business head on his shoulders. And he did ask me if I ever foresaw some type of like exit or, you sell this business. And I just can't. I know that that's a thing. I know that that's like business strategy for a lot of people, but that's just not what I would build this business for.
I don't know if these business sell well. I've got friends who've sold. Either. I'm familiar with how those work.
Yeah.
And there's such a high degree of technical information and unless, like, I see it as a relatively low-risk business because I'm so deep in it.
Right.
But a lot of people would say, dude, you're not producing widgets and selling them, on a website. Like, this is highly customizable. And also, you take that main operator out. Like we were talking about earlier, getting a sales manager would be really hard because there's a characteristic of you that's been able to do this really well.
Right.
If you go out of that business as an owner and you sell, like, who's doing that now? The thing might fall apart. And as much as we've grown, it's a lot. To me, it's a lot like a larger law firm.
Right.
If somebody else does it, you could merge with them or sell up to them.
Yeah.
But there's not many people that do this, so it's not like there's some massive company that rolls up companies like this. So I hope you like it because you're probably gonna be stuck with it.
I do. Yeah. That's one of the things I like about it.
Good. All right. So we've had fun today. I'm glad you came. I think you've given some good messaging to people out there who either in this and want to get better or people that are saying, what's really possible? Is this really real?
Yeah.
Like, you give them really something cool to think about, something to chew on.
I do want to say that there is, I think we talked about it earlier, and I don't know if the camera was rolling or not when we were talking about it, but there is, it wasn't because we were talking about flying. You made a decision 4 or 5 flight lessons in that it wasn't for you.
Yeah.
This is absolutely something I think people need to do self-evaluation on and practice really, really good self-awareness. I think that this is definitely a vertical of business that is not for everybody, but for the people that it's for, I think it could be very life-changing. But I think there's some folks that might benefit from maybe more time doing the thing that they were doing before. I think that if I had stumbled upon this 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been ready.
Oh, wow. It was right place, right person, not right time.
Right.
And I think about that, if that would apply to my situation. And yeah, that might be fair. Early on, I don't know if I would have had what it taken to get there.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So to those people, again, who are listening,
Yeah.
what would you tell a specific message for them that are interested in it or headed this direction, or maybe they're in it and they're trying to decide if they really want to make their career, make it bigger? What do you tell those people?
It's education. Education. I think one of the biggest things that I got out of the original summit that I went to that I thought was invaluable and I took it to heart was that you printed out a title underwriting manual, right? You took this thing that you were making these decisions based off of, and you printed it out and you reflected on it and you read it and you read through it. I literally downloaded the PDFs that night, and instead of listening to audiobooks, I was listening to like Westcore's underwriting manual, and the amount of stuff that I learned out of that, it was amazing. The things that are applicable to what we're able to do now, just understanding that like the number one key component to this is not just hustle and grind. It is like, it's know-how. You actually need to have the chops. This is study, like hunker down and study.
So tell them go learn. It can get boring sometimes, but crack a book, crack an underwriting manual, get in a good video and go absorb.
Yeah. You've got really great content out there. And what I liked about your content is you kind of point to those resources, underwriting manuals, estates codes, government statutes, they're all there. Like I think in hindsight, this has given me an appreciation and an affinity for the law that if I had in my younger days, I might have accidentally ended up an attorney.
All right. So then I know how much has changed with you in the last 3 years. That's not a lot of time, but it's changed a lot. So I want you to talk to the Chris 3 years ago and go back and tell him something. What do you tell Chris 3 years ago?
Oh, you don't know everything. You don't know everything. I think that it's really difficult in business to be open to new ideas. And I think that this is an idea that I had to be open to at the right time. Really 3 years ago, I think if I had known that this was an option and I could have started learning about it, I mean, there's deals in the last 3 years, well, I guess the 3 years prior to this, that I passed on or that I told people. And part of this is like, I feel personally responsible. I definitely gave bad advice out of pure ignorance. I just didn't know this wasn't an option. I gave bad advice to people who I owed a fiduciary duty to because I didn't know better. And the Chris 3 years ago was licensed for 7 years. He thought he was hot shit. I was above the curve, right? I was one of the agents that survived the extremely high attrition rate that there is in real estate agency. I was an active investor. I was flipping houses. I thought that I knew everything. And every time I get to that point, there's something around the corner that reminds me that I don't know shit. I don't know shit. There's so much left to learn. Even right now, I feel like there's so much left to learn. And so, yeah, I mean, staying active in my own self-education. Big Jim Rohn quote that I carry with me around a lot is like, if you want to make more money, become more valuable, And that to me has really just meant like learning more, learning how to do more, learning more about what it is that you do. Learning what to do is a lot different than learning why you do it. And that why has been the why behind all of this has been really, really invaluable to making sure that I stay passionate about it and I remind myself that like there's a lot that I still don't know. So
you'll get there.
Yeah, I mean.
So if folks want to get a hold of you, they may have questions about how to do this work. They might have questions about, will you partner with me? All that stuff. How do they find you, Chris?
So I'm very public on Facebook. My name's Christopher Beery. I'm sure you guys will put that out there. You'll see a picture.
Put it in the caption.
Yep. You'll see a picture of me and my gorgeous wife as my profile picture. Feel free to hit me up on Facebook. We also have a website. It's heirloomsolution.com. Just make sure it's singular. I'm sure you guys will put that down there as well. Just on my website, you have my email and my phone number. It'll ring to me. There's also an input form if you do have a deal you want us to take a look over. More than happy to kind of review those things with you. But yeah, always open to taking phone calls and emails and text messages and things like that. I really enjoy talking about this kind of stuff. So it's not an imposition. Please reach out.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, Chris. I enjoyed it a lot today.
Same, man. So did I. I really appreciate you having me out.
My commitment to you is to deliver the most interesting, messy, and profitable real estate deals on earth. And in exchange for that, I only ask that you subscribe to this podcast and share it with a friend who can benefit.